morning, everyone. We'd like to begin by sincerely thanking the China Center for organizing this wonderful competition. It's remarkably engaging and insightful to innovate ways to relieve tensions between the United States and China. We'd also like to give a special thank you to our coach, Professor Zhao Lo at the Carlson School of Management. We greatly appreciate the guidance and support that we've received throughout this competition. My name is Bianca Turman, and I'm an economics and finance major through CLA and the Carlson School of Management.
I'm a political science major at CLA.
My name is Sabrina. I'm a marketing and finance double major at the Carlson School of Management.
My name is Lo Yuan, and my preferred name is Carol. I'm majoring in marketing and MIS in the Carlson School of Management.
All right, so these are our 6 steps of walking through the course. So the first step, just finish the topic itself, of course. So obviously, across Europe, issues, tensions have increased between China and the U.S. TikTok recently, the tech giant Huawei, and then the spy balloon, of course, we all know, with Biden addressing it as State of the Union address, which really makes it feel urgent that we do something to resolve this tension.
Excuse me. Could you speak louder or move closer to the podium?
So, healthcare. We first began with thinking very internationally because it is an international problem, and we got pretty large scale before actually looking at the rubric closely. And we quickly identified the Belt and Road Initiative and looked at the individual roads and how both countries can possibly parlay that and offer our various strengths and weaknesses to maybe get involved with that. But we realized that it was just too ambitious to start out with, too large politics involved. So then we noticed the local resources requirement, talked to Zhao and talked amongst ourselves, and noticed that we have all these great local resources in healthcare, such as Medtronic, our own university for clinical trials, and other like clinic, and also healthcare is very impactful at any level, and it's a very tangible issue that both citizens of both countries are well aware. There's always room for research and improvement. Both countries have strengths. So on to our 2 subtopics in healthcare, the first being R&D. So recently China has been on an upward trend with significant growth in clinical trials, which we concluded was a pretty clear intention that it is a priority for them. So we decided, how can we possibly help them with this? And we looked at our respective strengths and weaknesses. The main difference we noted was China has better access to large sample sizes, and the US has better established funding. With advancing equity in healthcare, we noticed the history that inland China has been neglected relative to the wealthy coast, which is pretty accurately reflected in their healthcare gap. And although China has recently taken some initiative, there's still significant room for improvement. So we decided again what can we offer. We noticed that at the U we have local resources such as our community health initiative, and also Medtronic has patient engagement solutions. So we're pretty confident that those tools could help us bridge the gap. Also, we noticed that larger American pharmaceutical companies could request to conduct clinical trials in China tied back to our R&D initiative, or to provide devices for the hospitals to partner with. But generally, we noticed that there's significant potential to help China with their healthcare equity.
So historically, the United States and China have been wary of collaborating with one another in research and development, but now more than ever, it's important that these 2 countries cooperate to further research and development and pioneer new research for the benefit of the world. We begin with a comparative overview between China and the United States, first looking to their membership of the International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceuticals for Human Use, also known as the ICH. So both China and the United States are regulatory members of this organization, meaning they need to incorporate ICH quality standards into their own governing body. However, China, as a recent member of this organization, has not fully been able to integrate them meaning that much of their research has been flagged for not abiding by quality standards and is thus unusable by the international community. In addition, they differ between the sufficient sample sizes and robust funding resources. China is largely centralized urban populations that are overall more willing to participate in clinical research trials than United States participants. And funding is also a greatly different resource between China and the United States. The United States is the world's largest expenditure in research and development at over $720 billion in 2020 for a Center for Economic Policy Research report released in 2022. China is the second world's largest spender in R&D. However, this is largely contingent on if it's a private organization or a public organization completing the research, meaning that funding is not readily available. They also both struggle with interconnected research and clinical practice. While academics perform the majority of clinical research trials, overall, we see that this is not necessarily being conducted in the hospital environment, as many physicians do not necessarily partake in this clinical research, and overall, this has a difficulty in getting effective medical treatments to patients currently suffering from various diseases. Moreover, they have a difference in the expansion of the healthcare market. China became the world's second largest healthcare market in 2017 and is expected to increase by 3.58% this year, as per a global data report published in 2021. The United States, on the other hand, has largely seen stagnated growth within their own healthcare markets. International cooperation is not largely convenient between China and the United States, as regulatory bodies in China require governmental approval to share any human specimen to a foreign organization. In addition, China recently revised its patent system and is still gaining credibility as it circulates to the courts and answers legal questions regarding its implementation. Another key difference is that China requires an in-country sponsor to represent any sort of legal process regarding clinical research trials for foreign organizations, meaning a foreign organization wishing to complete research in a clinical research trial needs to have support within China. Thus, it's imperative that the United States and China collaborate to jointly conduct clinical research trials to further research and development. We now move into a brief timeline. 1990 was the inception of the ICH, and the United States' current FDA completely embodies ICH quality standards. In 2009, China released its zero markup policy and its effective drugs list, or essential drugs list, to be able to shift to a more affordable healthcare system. In 2017 was when China joined the ICH. And 2020 marked the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. China immediately saw an uptick in their number of clinical trials. However, the United States was more delayed, with an increase in clinical trials not happening until the following year. And in 2021 was when China released its fourth amendment to patent law, which was later argued in a Supreme Court decision released in 2022. This was also the same year that China increased its R&D expenditure by 7%. It is overall an effort for China to become the world's leader in innovation by 2050. China overall becomes a preferable location to conduct clinical research trials due to faster patient recruitment, lower costs, and overall a broader expanding healthcare market. We use this information to formulate our proposal to further research and development and collaboration between China and the United States. We noticed that there was a gap existing between hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and academia. And in order to bridge this gap, we propose a mentorship-focused program in which the United States and China jointly conduct clinical research trials in China, using the model of West China Hospital and Sichuan University. This connection between the hospital and the university allows current MD and PhD candidates and practicing physicians and researchers to work with one another and to be able to close the gap between clinical research and clinical practice. We then go into specifying what research areas we would like this program to focus on, focusing on 5 key areas that are of utmost importance that China and the United States address. The first being oncology. Cancer has been addressed as a top 5 leading cause of death between China and the United States. And according to a McKinsey & Company report released in 2020, every 10 minutes in China, there are 55 cancer deaths, 13 of those being from lung cancer. And moreover, we see hematological disorders are of great prevalence between China and the United States. A 2021 World Health Organization report noting that more than 25% of either population suffers from some type of hematological disorder, that number as high as 46% in the United States. And as there's currently an aging population in China and the United States, there is a greater need for geriatric care to be focused on for research and development. We look at 2 potential candidates to participate in this mentorship program. We would seek senior level American researchers who are familiar with clinical trial registration and ICH quality standards to be able to serve as mentors as China begins to integrate ICH quality standards into their own framework. We first look at Eshe Imani, who is a doctor in biochemistry and is currently a senior level researcher at Merck, a very large pharmaceutical company. We would assess who is a senior level researcher using the research grade evaluation guide and looking for researchers at or above a level 13. We also look to Yu Hui, who is a current graduate student at Wuhan University and has exemplified experience in research and has also had a significant experience working in a hospital environment. Overall, we would seek applicants who have a second language experience with additional preference to American researchers who have studied Mandarin Chinese and Chinese researchers who have studied English. We would seek to look for high-achieving applicants with hospital experience, interested in pioneering research, and fostering mutual learning between the United States and China. Eshe and Hui would be among 20 researchers selected from their country to participate in this mentorship program, and we would work to collaborate with the current research institutions the University of Minnesota partners with to assess any sort of equipment and lodging needs for this mentorship program. And overall, we would hope that this collaboration would also minimize costs. There are two key timelines that need to be noted for this program to take place. First being the administrative timeline. In November is when the majority of grant applications are released, with decisions being available in June. We would take this time to also search for donors and sponsors of this program. In July, we would release the applications and have, in July, we'd be able to release the applications, then being due in October. Perhaps one of the most important application components is the proposal for the research area of interest. We would work with senior level faculty at the University of Minnesota to assess the feasibility of this research proposal and overall determine the applicant's competitiveness, with decisions being available in December. We now move on to the program timeline. January 2025 would be the beginning of the program. The first 2 months focused on a significant amount on language practice and training. And the first 6 months would be focused on developing the mentorship experience between program participants and also formulating a joint research question. Then by June 2025, you'd expect researchers to have completed begin phase one of their trial and then complete phase two by January 2028. At this time, we would expect research would either have been discontinued, published, or could potentially even move forward into the next phase. At this point, we would want to collaborate with pharmaceutical companies to potentially advance this clinical research trial even further forward. And in February 2028, we would assess whether we want to send an additional cohort of American and Chinese researchers. We would determine this decision based on if we successfully fostered mutual learning between the United States and China, if there was a bridge between clinical research and clinical practice, and finally, as to if we were able to pioneer innovative research and development.
So other than the research and development challenge that Bianca addressed previously, the healthcare equity issue is also something that China has been working on for a long period of time. Due to the differences in socioeconomic status, the medical infrastructure in suburban region of China is much less developed than the urban regions. According to this figure shown on the right, there is less than as many medical institution beds and licensed physicians per 1,000 citizens in the rural areas compared to the urban areas in China. And while the COVID-19 treatment are generally accessible during the pandemic, where people in rural areas have to delay their non-COVID health needs due to the limited availability of healthcare services. Additionally, China's large population base leads to a high demand in preemptive healthcare and specialization in chronic disease. However, the high demand is over the capacity. China is lack of professionals in the healthcare areas. And this figure shown in the right, in the left shows that China has around 1.5 doctors per 1,000 citizens, which is just over half the number in the United States. So China is looking for solutions to minimize the gap when comparing access to healthcare in rural areas to coastal cities and meet the increasing demand in preemptive and chronic healthcare. So I will hand it off to Sabrina to talk about our proposal.
Thank you, Carol, for giving us an overview of the problem in a nutshell. And to address this issue, our proposal is to approach this from a more business approach and then also engage not only medical students, but also students who are in public health and also healthcare management. And so specifically, we want to start off by using the current program that the University of Minnesota has. So our Community Health Initiative program as a basis, as a foundation for this program. So currently CHI program implements internships and local health services, and we do want to make sure that our school is addressing public health disparities during these internships. So they're mainly providing public health consulting services to small facilities that target minorities in our region. So our next step would really want to build off of this foundation and create a two-way stream experiential learning program where one semester would be spent in the United States and one semester would be spent in China to address healthcare disparities in both countries. And both international Chinese students and domestic United States students will be involved. We want to provide healthcare consulting services to these local facilities in three major areas, mainly focusing on quality of healthcare, efficiency, and perhaps also systematic changes. We also wanted to consider the option of addressing this program as a volunteer opportunity or internship to engage more students in this program. And so if we evaluate the effects of this program and we find that the mutual learning experience is beneficial to our students and the local community, we could also expand beyond campus and use the specific advantage that the University of Minnesota has, which is access to healthcare corporations that are headquartered locally. We could be partnering with potential companies like Medtronic and their patient engagement program, which focuses on establishing telehealth and also easier access to preemptive and day-to-day healthcare with technology. So we hope this would help China potentially relieve some of the preemptive care stress and also help them meet the demands they're seeing right now. In exchange, US companies and also the University of Minnesota as a third-party mediator could negotiate for access to market data and also the consumer market.
We now move on to the feasibility of both of these proposals. A collaboration between the United States and China to conduct clinical research trials in China is largely feasible as it expands upon University of Minnesota resources. This could be an extension of the postdoctoral and post-residency fellowships currently available at the U of M. In fact, the University of Minnesota, as a Research One institute, presently works with 6 research institutions in China, 5 of them known as the China Consortium. By implementing this mentorship program, we would be able to foster a greater relationship with our current partners and also engage in innovative research and development. Moreover, there are broader funding opportunities available for international collaboration projects with governmental and non-governmental organizations interested in fostering this greater international cooperation.
And for our proposal of advancing equity in healthcare from the university side, we have opportunities such as the Community Health Initiative Program to gather the American and Chinese students who are interested in healthcare equity. And this could provide them with an opportunity to conduct consulting services to help plan and develop local and smaller facilities to treat more specialized chronic disease. And the partnerships between the local companies such as Medtronic and inland hospitals in China could result in an exchange of resources that could bring both parties into a win-win situation.
All right, on to perhaps the most important part of the proposal, the potential effect. So for short-term impacts with R&D, incorporation of better requirements and quality standards will allow the US to normalize the conduct of ethical quality research in China. Beyond this, our program will further mutual learning and innovation, bridge the gap between clinical practice and research, and gain additional funding opportunities. For advancing equity in healthcare, we hope for improved equality in China, healthcare system, of course, a larger consumer market for American companies with especially rewarding outcomes. For longer term impacts, we hope that hopefully our proposal can lead to a global healthcare effort with China's South Silk Road, which will allow us to expand our current initiatives. But hopefully, as the Health Silk Road is a smaller segment of the larger Belt and Road Initiative, possibly confront China and address larger concerns, as the BRI pretty accurately reflects a lot of our problems with China, such as climate change, with 85% of those BRI projects having a significant detrimental effect to doing anything good about climate change, and also countries' independence, as many of these smaller countries that China has projects in are significantly indebted to China, which is making them reliant on China's ecosystem, which we do not want. We want them to be able to maintain their independence and their democracies. So that is how we plan to employ healthcare as a force of good for diplomacy between China and the US. Thank you for allowing us to present today.